Hello, and welcome to this look at the book series Royal Dragons. And this is a book series by Jace Cannon and Marcus Schloss. 5 books, and I finished the last book today. I'm recording this on 19th of May, and the last two books just became available a couple of days ago, so I plowed through the last two books at a fairly high rate. And, well, perhaps I should start at the beginning. I was not really familiar with either the authors or this book series when I, by chance, came over the first book while I guess I was really shopping for some other book, on some other fantasy book, and I came over this one, and I thought the cover looked nice. It actually works sometimes to have a nice cover, and I didn't really look much at the description of story of the book, but I did skim through some of the reviews, and it seemed to be fairly well received, so I picked up a copy. And well, when it comes to fantasy, I read quite a lot of fantasy growing up. I read classics such as The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and I read many of the Forgotten Realms book series, not only the books that starred Drizzt Do'Urden, but in general, many of the Forgotten Realms books. I didn't read the Dragonlance series, but I was familiar with it, and I read several other series, some of them related to dragons, such as the Deathgate Cycle by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, which was quite nice, and I read the books that were set in, I think it was Midkemia, Magician, I think the first book was called. So I read a lot of fantasy, what I guess you might call Western style fantasy. And that's why I more or less assumed when I saw the cover of this book, I guessed that this would probably be a Western style fantasy book, possibly starring some kind of princess that made use of dragons to save her kingdom or something like that. Now, even though I did read a lot of fantasy before, I haven't really done much of that recently. What I have been exposed to of fantasy fiction has, I guess, primarily been some anime, isekai anime, which is a very popular genre. And I'm particularly fond of the, I guess what you call the subgenre of isekai, where you have some kind of person from our world, or a world similar to ours, and he travels to some other fantasy realm, and applies knowledge that he has acquired in our world, or that is known in our world, and he makes use of this knowledge to succeed or to improve the fantasy world that he has arrived in. I think how the realist heroes save the kingdom is one of those types of series, and one that I enjoyed quite a lot. But I've read a couple of others, or rather, I have watched a couple of others also. Now, when this book, Royal Dragons, first book in the series, arrived at my doorstep, I picked it up, and it turned out that my expectations were quite far off the mark. It didn't really star a young princess. Not that there isn't any young princess in the story. There certainly is, but the main character is male and quite sort of masculine alpha type character. And what I, to my surprise, realized was that this book is perhaps closer to the sort of isekai anime and manga type of fantasy storytelling that is popular now, rather than traditional fantasy literature such as Lord of the Rings and Forgotten Realms novels and so on. This book does not really have a hero that comes from another world. It's not an isekai story, but it quite clearly follows the story path of having a hero that quickly becomes quite overpowered and goes around collecting new members to his harem. And in this case, also collecting various types of dragons for his armies. So this is quite clearly not a book that is in the same type of category as, for example, Lord of the Rings, I would say. But I found that this, I didn't find that to be a problem. I found this to be a very entertaining series. It's perhaps not high literature, and I guess it should be noted that this book series contains quite a lot of sections that are of a somewhat risque nature, as in it has quite a lot of sequences where the hero gets, let's say, intimately familiar with the members of his harem. He doesn't only collect them, he actually well, we actually get descriptions of what he does with them in his off time. So it's perhaps somewhat more suited for adults rather than children, I would say, because of this. And perhaps that's unfortunate. There are not so many of these sequences that I would say that this is an erotic novel with a fantasy skin. It's more a fantasy novel with erotic sections, and even though it has quite a lot of these, it's definitely a fantasy story first, I would say. And without this section, I don't think there would be much lost with regards to the story. But of course, presumably the authors know their audience, and even though the book series might otherwise be accessible to a larger audience, potential audience, I guess that they know what they are doing when they are including these sections in the books. So it is what it is, but anyway, it's something to be aware of. And I enjoyed it, even though I didn't purchase this for this reason, but still. As a book about fantasy, or rather a fantasy book, it is quite enjoyable by itself. I read through the entire thing quite quickly, and that's partly because I found it very enjoyable, but also because it was quite easily readable, easily digestible. So to say a little bit about the structure of the books in this series, the first book is introduction, I guess. You have the setup of the world and the hero and so on. The next books do, to a certain extent, show signs of the hero having become quite overpowered, and in many of the subsequent books, he either deliberately places himself or is placed in situations where he cannot apply the full range of his powers. So he's sort of handicapped, and you have tension or challenge created as a result of this. And this is, I guess, a common problem in stories where you have an OP hero. And apart from this, the last novel is fairly standalone, I would say. It provides a sort of explanation for all the mysteries of the world as they are presented in the earlier books. So if you prefer to not know quite that much about how the world is functioning and why things are the way they are, maybe skip this last novel. It's fairly standalone story-wise, and the main story that goes through the first books ends at the end of the fourth book, even though there is, of course, a cliffhanger for the events in the fifth book. And as for the dragons, there are a lot of dragons here. Much of the magic in the world comes from dragons, and much of the complexity and challenges that the characters in this book face are either created by or solved by applying the powers of different dragons in various ways. And you have quite a wide range of different dragon types with different types of powers. For example, you might have a fire dragon that breathes fire and so on, or a water dragon that breathes some kind of water and so on. And then you have hybrid dragons that are a mix of other types of dragons and might have more rare or exotic powers. And very much of the storyline is built around this. And I think that is the main things to note. As I noticed already, I found this series to be quite enjoyable, easily readable, and I devoured it quite quickly, you might say. I came over it by more or less an accident, but it has somewhat revived my interest and joy of fantasy literature, and for that I am quite grateful. I will probably try to read some other books or watch some stories related to this also in the future. But for now, I think I have said what I wanted to say regarding this book series, so thank you for listening, and goodbye.